West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy with Chef Justice Putnam. Netrootsradio.com.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, l'âge tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire.
It is an important moment in which we should take stock of where we go from here, to look at how our leaders, especially the new ones, will handle and talk about the gun violence epidemic in America. The White House today calling on the brand new Speaker of the House, his name is Mike Johnson, to work with President Joe Biden to get something, anything done to protect Americans.
The House has a new Speaker. Who he said he's ready to get to work and to find common ground. Now is the time. Now is the time to find common ground. Let's work together to ban assault weapons and high-capacity magazines. Let's work together to enact universal background checks, require safe storage of guns, and keep guns out of the hands of criminals and dangerous individuals who have no business being armed with a weapon of war.
For his part, Speaker Johnson, who has offered thoughts and prayers to the victims, has voted against all of those gun safety measures listed there by Karine Jean-Pierre and others in the past. He has a 92% approval rating from the NRA. That's according to the group Vote Smart. And he has previously blamed school shootings on abortion and the teaching of evolution. Comments not to be believed, really, from a man who is right now 2 heartbeats away from the presidency. And when it comes to other national issues, here's where the new Speaker Johnson, stands. He supports a national abortion ban. Last year, he introduced a nationwide version of a Don't Say Gay bill. And he has spoken out in support of banning marriage equality. Johnson was also a key architect in the attempted coup to keep Donald Trump in power after he lost the 2020 election. The brand new Republican Speaker of the House was the one who led that legal front, the amicus brief supporting the Texas lawsuit that sought to invalidate the presidential election results in 4 swing states that President Joe Biden won. Republican Speaker Johnson's win in the Republican circus of the last 3 weeks makes clear that there is no longer any question to be asked about where the Republican Party stands on questions central to American democracy. Take it from the lips of Matt Gaetz, the man who started all this latest Republican congressional upheaval weeks ago when he started the move and voted to oust McCarthy.
And the swamp is on the run. MAGA is ascendant. And if you don't think that moving from Kevin McCarthy to MAGA Mike Johnson shows the ascendance of this movement and where the power in the Republican Party truly lies, then you're not paying attention.
That is where we start the hour with some of our most favorite reporters and friends. NBC News Capitol Hill correspondent Ali Vitale is back with us. Also joining us, former Congressman from Florida, MSNBC political analyst David Jelly is here. And our friend, the former Democratic Congresswoman, MSNBC political analyst Donna Edwards is with us. So Ali Vitale, I heard that Gates clip. And if you say Mega Mike, it sounds like Magic Mike, which is a movie I never saw but have heard of. This is his moniker. And this is why he won. And this is repellent to swing state voters who will be critical to growing the majority or even keeping it. What do Republicans have to say about what is a political mess?
First of all, please don't ruin Magic Mike for me. I quite love Channing Tatum in that movie. I don't want to conflate these two things. Please leave Channing Tatum and Mike Johnson completely separate. Done. But now that we've gotten that out of the way, I do think that Republicans went through the last 3+ weeks of chaos. And it was chaotic, and all of them said it. And now there are attack ads where Republicans can, in their own words, describe their majority as chaotic and dysfunctional. That exists. But I also think that they may have landed in a place that was both more true to the ethos of the House Republican Conference than McCarthy was as a leader, but also someone in Mike Johnson who has more politically problematic baggage than McCarthy ever did. And here's why I mean that. You know that I'm someone who really believes that abortion is such a landscape-changing issue. We saw it in 2022. It's still being tested in real time. The post-Roe landscape is still very much unfolding in real time before us, and we don't know what the electoral implications of that are going to be. But when you look at someone like Speaker Johnson, he allows that to be tested in real time because whoever the speaker is becomes a national figure for this party. The fact that he is someone who pushed for a national ban is something that already I've been asking Republican women about. People like South Carolina's Nancy Mace, who's from that swingy Charleston area, Nicole Malliotakis out of New York. Both of them have said that they have discomfort, especially Mace, with the party's positions on abortion. Mace even yesterday reiterated to me that this party, her party, has a problem with the way it talks about women and reproductive care and bodily autonomy. Yes, that is a problem that we have seen play out at the polls in the small groupings of ballot box moments that we have had so far with this issue. But Mace also defended her vote for Johnson, and Malliotakis did the same by saying that they're not going to agree with every speaker on every issue. And this is where it becomes a problem, not just on abortion, but on LGBTQ plus issues, on mass shootings. I think when Karine Jean-Pierre earlier today said, it's the time to come together on points of commonality. I also think the question that we should probably be asking ourselves in the halls of Congress is, what if there are no points of commonality to explain the fact that we have seen further inaction after more mass shootings since last year when they did legislation on this issue? I think that's just one of the political realities here when you talk about all of these different cultural issues and you relate them back to the Speaker's office. There's a lot we're still unpacking in real time.
Okay, we're going to do all of that because yours truly has 2 hours to work with. So I made a list. We're going to do abortion. We're going to do shooting. We're going to do marriage equality. Let's start with abortion since you brought us there. So a lot of the bans eliminate exceptions in the case of rape and incest. That is opposed by 87% of all Americans. A lot of the bans also make impossible exceptions for life of the mother. That has the opposition of 93% of all Americans. Here is the new Republican Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, at a House Judiciary Committee, sharing a little bit of his views on abortion.
Roe v. Wade gave constitutional cover to the elective killing of unborn children in America. Period. Think about it. Let it settle on you. As a result, the lives of more than 63 million American children have been lost. You think about the implications of that on the economy. We're all struggling here to cover the bases of Social Security and Medicare and Medicaid and all the rest. If we had all those able-bodied workers in the economy, we wouldn't be going upside down and toppling over like this.
A woman's right to make choices about her own body or an unviable pregnancy or her own health or life, or in the case of rape and incest, reduced to, quote, from the Republican Speaker, able-bodied workers in the economy. Wow. Had anyone seen that?
That's actually even just from last year. So I know that as opposition research, and you and everyone else on this panel knows how this works, people dig into the archives, and certainly that has been happening in regards to now Speaker Johnson's past statements from the time that he was in the Louisiana legislature, from his time as a lawyer for a conservative religious freedom group. All of that is out there. But this is not Oppo in the sense that they had to dig for it. This is from, what did your upper left just say, May of 2022? This is the current iteration of the Judiciary Committee on which he serves. And I think it's instructive to look at the committees that Johnson himself serves on. It's not just Judiciary, where under Jim Jordan, they have been one of the leaders in leading the charge on investigations of the Biden administration and related allies and family members. But then also the fact that Johnson serves on the Select Committee on so-called weaponization of government. It's a red meat committee. We haven't heard too much about it, but it's a reminder that this is a guy that serves at the very center of a lot of these Republican red meat issues and moments that they're attempting to push it out of this building.
I mean, David Jolly, the truth structurally of this circus that you and Allie have covered for the whole network for the last 3 weeks is that the structural impediment to winning the votes of Gaetz and all of his ilk meant that the electoral baggage that the eventual speaker would have would be exactly what it is. But that said, we're not going to look away. Here is Republican Speaker Mike Johnson in 2016 in Shreveport, Louisiana.
People say, how can a young person go into their schoolhouse and open fire on their classmates? Because we've taught a whole generation, couple of generations now of Americans, that there is no right and wrong, that it's about survival of the fittest, and you evolve from the primordial slime. Why is that life of any sacred value? Because there's nobody sacred to whom it's owed. None of this should surprise us.
This is who they are, I guess.
Yeah. I would suggest it might also be because we have gun laws that allow a 16-year-old access to a firearm. But Mike Johnson and I see the world in that issue very differently. I think this conversation you're having with Allie is a very important one, because I think in the rush of the palace intrigue, it's, oh no, is Mike Johnson worse or better than Kevin McCarthy? What if it was this person or this person? I don't see Mike Johnson's ascending to the speakership as a change in direction at all. I think it's just one foot in front of the other for the Republican conference, and it is a reminder, and I think this is the importance of the conversation you and Allie are having. It's a reminder to the nation of where the Republican Party is today on critical issues of importance to them. Be it guns, be it reproductive rights, be it immigration, be it voting rights, be it the willingness to steal a free and fair election from Joe Biden. Mike Johnson is a reminder to the nation of that. And I do think the other issue that comes into play with Mike Johnson is his public living of his religious beliefs in the political arena. And I know this is a tricky issue, but I would say even among conservative Republicans, many believe that the way you empower a church is to actually use government to secure freedom for all people. And that allows faith-based institutions to thrive and change hearts and minds at the altar, not within the Capitol. And Mike Johnson's willingness and interest in using government to legislate religious tenets and morality gets into a really tricky space that then just really accelerates how out of step they are with Main Street America on critical issues of personal liberty.
It is Friday, the 27th of October of 2023, and you are in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I am your chef de cuisine, Justice Putnam. Gunner the English Bulldog is our snoozing sous chef. Precious, the little Yorkie, is our tour girl, and she will be seating you directly for our especially special daily special, Blue Moon Spirits Fridays, because we are all Nighthawks in the Diner of Life. That's right, put that in your hopper. Okay, looks like Trump is still raging in court, or at least having his proxies. We, meaning the United States, did you know that the U.S. and us are spelled the same? Wow, some people have just found that out. And they think that they are luminaries of intelligent thought about America, too. Isn't that odd? Anyway, we did a military airstrike against, Iranian-backed elements in Syria who had been attacking our installations? What do we call them? Anyway, attacking our guys for what? I heard upwards of like 48 nights in a row. What's up with that? So apparently this is not so unusual because, there is a conflict going on, and this has been going on for quite some time, and we've sort of hit back, And these aren't necessarily for, revenge, retaliation, but to maybe stop it. And that's what we've done. But because of the conditions of the world at the moment, every little thing might be, blown up into a much bigger thing, and do we really want to go there? So, fortunately, because this is Joe Biden, a responsible adult, I think that those possibilities of people being surprised by our actions, I think that might have been mitigated in some fashion. Okay. Good. And that's what we're supposed to do. I am sorry. Syria is a quagmire, and who's involved in that? Yeah, Vlad. What's interesting is a lot of the disinformation videos or whatnot about what's happening in Gaza, they've been picking up from Syria, from Russian aggression, along with, Assad too. I mean, let's be clear. But putting the onus on the Israelis and the United States, genocide Joe, F you. Also like how quickly we get the agitprop of 20 years of gaining so much trust, the Democratic Party, doing this for Muslim outreach, and now they've destroyed it in just a few days. How dare you? I'm never voting for the Democratic yet. Really? That's like widespread now. Where'd that agitprop come from? Yeah, I'll tell you where. But you'll have to learn Cyrillic. Or I don't know. You might have to learn Mandarin cuneiform too. I think if they're not in cahoots, they're playing from the same playbook. Yes. Representative democracy is the bane of governments and systems and people like that. Let's be clear. So now we have those types as Speaker of the House. Well, they're not going to get away with it. We still have the ability to vote them out. They're going to take that away very quickly, mind you. So when we have agitprop spread by friends about, I am never going to vote for a Democrat again, not Joe Biden, genocide Joe. You're doing Vlad's work, and you better be clear about that. Is it true? I don't know. Everything has a kernel of truth now, doesn't it? But I don't hear about war crimes ascribed to Hamas or Hezbollah. I'd be fine with this just being a police action. Go in there with a SWAT team, search warrant, and take them out. It'd be nice to have the community maybe identify where they are and have, turn them over. That's not going to happen, is it? In fact, I would say it's not a war at all. It's a police action. Yeah, just so you can bypass a few rules and regulations in the process, huh? Isn't that what they're already doing? So, I don't like the idea of firebombing whole city blocks like they did in Philadelphia when they attacked Move. That was probably not a good idea, right? So it's not a good idea to, take out whole city blocks, high rises, though, down to rubble. Because a criminal group is taking up refuge in the basement. Or somewhere else in the building. It's a little heavy-handed, I think. That's why I'd like to see more of a police action. But once again, it'd be nice if the people who are living among these tyrants would kind of help the cops out a little bit. Be nice. But that's just me. All right, well, that's a romantic fantasy. Yes. You want a ceasefire? Hand over the perps. Sounds simple, doesn't it? Yeah, it does. That's why they sent Jared there. And not the rest of us, because we're too simple-minded about these things. Okay. All right. Well, thankfully, we do have Joe. And he's not genocidal Joe. This is just... It's agitprop from a foreign hostile actor, or a hostile foreign actor, and let's be clear. All right? Eek. And that doesn't mean that Netanyahu is getting away with it, because last I heard, we have been making extremely loud proclamations like "back off, Bibi." So I don't want to hear this Genocide Joe BS anymore. Excuse me. Oh, and chase some Jewish kids into like the library or wherever where they got to lock themselves in because hundreds of idiots are pounding on the doors saying, "Get the Jew." I don't like that. Not one whit. Stop it. Okay, got that off my chest. What do we have in store for you here in the salon of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy as we begin in the Bistro Cafe part? Now, we do things a little bit differently here in America. We eat the salad first instead of last. All right? So we have the chef's table out in the back. After everything, you get your little amuse-bouche then. Okay? So a little bit different than how they do it in Europe. But this is, after all, the United States of America. Yes, indeed. So as we begin here in the Bistro Cafe part of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, the voting record and extreme policy positions of new House Speaker MAGA Mike Johnson deserves a closer look. And they looked at it. And we're going to find out even more. Yes, we will. On the rest of the menu, Wisconsin Republicans back a bill outlawing university financial aid based on race and diversity. Oh, no, they're just... No more Lee Atwater coding anymore. They're going right for the N-word, aren't they? Yes, they are. Oh, this is actually some good news in this next story. The Kentucky Supreme Court struck down a new law giving participants in constitutional cases the right to change venue. And the reason they're doing that is because black people are filling the bench there in this one place, and here's the constitutional cases. We can't have that. And the Kentucky Supreme Court said, yes, you do. And a federal judge ruled Georgia congressional and legislative districts are racially discriminatory and must be redrawn by December 8th. They better get on it. That's coming up. After the break, we move to the chef's table, where the UN Secretary General has appointed a 39-member panel to advise on the international governance of artificial intelligence. And the Sudanese army and its rival paramilitary force have resumed peace talks in Jeddah. All that and more on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit. bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com. To the right of the page is the chat room link monitored by Kelly Lincoln. Thank you, Kelly. Across the page to the left from that chat room link near the bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com is the link to our Patreon page. And if you could afford to send us what you might spend on, I don't know, how about an espresso type coffee drink? If you could afford to send us those funds to us once a month, that really does help us pay the bills, not for West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, but for the whole radio station, Netroots Radio, and all the content and the bills, the ISP, everything. It really does help us pay those costs to keep this powerhouse of resistance resisting. And we thank those of you who have been so generous over these many years to allow us to fulfill our civic duty as the founders originally intended so many, many years ago. If you would like to follow Netroots Radio on Twitter, Mastodon, Spoutable, I think Blue Sky, pretty soon, you can do so at Netroots Radio. Also Facebook. Tom takes care of those, and I'm pretty sure that Kelly takes care of Facebook. But regardless, thank you both for everything that you do here. If you would like to follow me on Twitter, Mastodon, Spoutable, Blue Sky, Facebook, Instagram, Tumblr, etc., do so at Justice Putnam. And I post the show notes and links diary on Daily Co's 10 minutes before showtime, and that's where you can read the full and actual articles that have inspired us so greatly here. You can do that if you just go to my social media feeds, and the links to get to the show notes and links diaries are right there. Follow the show on Twitter at Cookbook West, and pick up podcasts by way of Spreaker, TuneIn, iHeart, YouTube, iTunes. Really just wherever podcasts can be found. You just cannot find them on Stitcher. Not anymore. Not anymore. Okay. Got that off my chest. Yeah. It's going to have to last me until Monday. And it will. This first offering here in the Bistro Cafe, part of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, is out of the Associated Press by Harm Van Weesen. Universities of Wisconsin officials would be prohibited from considering race and diversity when awarding state-funded financial aid under a Republican-backed bill that was debated yesterday, Thursday, at a State Assembly Committee hearing. The bill would require the State Higher Education Aids Board, which manages financial aids program, and officials at University of Wisconsin system schools and tech colleges to only weigh financial need and not factors including race, ethnicity, nationality, gender, sexual orientation, or religion when awarding grants and loans or creating enrollment and retention plans. I guess that means no more veterans either, huh? Do they know what they're getting themselves into? Yes, they do. The proposal comes months after the U.S. Supreme Court ruled that universities cannot consider race in the admissions process. That decision did not reference or apply to financial aid, but some lawmakers have still used it to justify scaling back race-based financial aid. This is proactive and forward-thinking, said Republican Representative Nick Rettinger, the bill's sponsor. You don't want to leave things in limbo to be potentially decided in litigation later. Republicans in at least a dozen states have introduced legislation this year targeting diversity, equity, and inclusion programs in higher education. In Wisconsin, GOP lawmakers slashed the university system's budget by $32 million in June and have withheld pay raises for UW employees until school officials agree to cut spending on so-called diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts by that amount. They're just saying, follow our racism or you're not getting your money. Democratic Governor Tony Evers is almost certain to veto the bill and other education proposals the committee considered on Thursday yesterday if they are passed by the Republican-controlled legislature. The Assembly Universities Committee also debated bills that would withhold state grants from schools that repeatedly violate speech rights on campus. What does that mean? Misinformation by Nazis? You got to let them have that? And prohibit public universities and high schools from censoring opinions in student media or punishing student reporters and school media advisors for their editorial decisions. I think there's only a one-way street on that, and you know what street that is. The right street. GOP lawmakers have long accused colleges of suppressing conservative viewpoints. I wish that were true. Republicans who control the university's committee highlighted these concerns earlier this year in a hearing on free speech, where only invited speakers were allowed to testify. Bruce Schreiner, also of the Associated Press, brings us this next offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Blue Moon Spirits Fridays. Kentucky Supreme Court yesterday, Thursday, struck down a new state law that allowed participants in constitutional challenges to get the cases switched to randomly selected counties. The court said the legislature's action on the assignment of court cases encroached on judicial authority. The law, enacted this year over the governor's veto, allowed any participants to request changes of venue for civil cases challenging the constitutionality of laws, orders, or regulations. It required the clerk of the state Supreme Court to choose another court through a random selection. Such constitutional cases typically are heard in Franklin County Circuit Court in the capital city of Frankfort. For years, or is that Frankfurt? For years, Republican officials have complained about a number of rulings from Franklin Circuit judges in high-stakes cases dealing with constitutional issues. Too many black Democratic judges. The High Court's ruling was a victory for Democratic Governor Andy Beshear, who, in his veto message, denounced the measure as an unconstitutional power grab by the state's GOP-dominated legislature. Lawmakers overrode the governor's veto, sparking the legal fight that reached the state's highest court. Republican Attorney General Daniel Cameron's office defended the venue law, which passed as Senate Bill 126. Cameron is challenging Beshear in the November 7th gubernatorial election, one of the nation's highest-profile campaigns this year. Writing for the court's majority, Chief Justice Lawrence B. Van Meter said the new law amounted to a violation of constitutional separation of powers. The measure granted unchecked power to a litigant to remove a judge from a case under the guise of a transfer, circumventing the established recusal process, the Chief Justice wrote. It operates to vest a certain class of litigants with the unfettered right to forum shop, without having to show any bias on the part of the presiding judge or just cause for removal, Van Meter said. The measure also resulted in divesting the circuit court of its inherent jurisdiction and authority to decide when and if a case should be transferred to another venue, the Chief Justice said. Responding to the ruling, Cameron's office insisted the legislature had acted within its authority. In a dissenting opinion, Justice Robert Conley said the legislature has the constitutional authority to pass legislation fixing venue and providing for changes of venue. SB 126 is new, and it is different from what the judiciary is used to, he wrote. I deem it unwise, imprudent, inefficient, and inexpedient, but I cannot say it is unconstitutional. In his March veto message, Beshear said the measure was aimed at one court. The intent, he said, was to control Kentucky courts and block any civil action alleging a law is unconstitutional from being heard in one circuit court, the Franklin Circuit Court. This final offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. A federal judge ruled yesterday, Thursday, that some of Georgia's congressional, state Senate, and state House districts were drawn in a racially discriminatory manner, ordering the state to draw an additional black majority congressional district. U.S. District Judge Steve Jones, in a 516-page order, also ordered the state to draw 2 new black majority districts in Georgia's 56-member state Senate and 5 new black majority districts in his 180-member state House. Jones ordered Georgia's Republican majority General Assembly and governor to fix the maps by December 8th, saying he would redraw districts if lawmakers did not. Hours after the ruling, Governor Brian Kemp issued a call for a special session to begin November 29th to redraw congressional and legislative districts, although a spokesperson for the governor said that is a scheduling decision and does not mean the Republican opposes an appeal. Jones' ruling follows an 8-day September trial in which the plaintiffs argued that black voters are still fighting opposition from white voters and needed federal help to get a fair shot, while the state argued court intervention on behalf of black voters was not needed. The Georgia case is part of a wave of litigation after the U.S. Supreme Court earlier this year stood by its interpretation of the Voting Rights Act, rejecting a challenge to the law by Alabama. Well, that brings us to our break. And when we get back from that break, we will go through weather from around the world. And we will finish up with the stories that we have curated for you today. You are listening to West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. And we will be right back.
You are listening to netrootsradio.com.
Please hang up and try again.
From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, a new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
This is Take Two Movie Review. I'm Mike Friend. This week, one swift review. While the rock scene has its deadheads and parrot heads, the pop scene's artist-specific fan bases have been more ephemeral, perhaps due to the age of those fans, until today's Swifties, the devotees of pop star Taylor Swift, who aren't all 12. More is going on here. Despite their success, the Backstreet Boys or Britney Spears never turned a movie of one of their shows into $100 million in a week or a tour into $4 billion and counting. Eras is the name of that tour and the impressive 168-minute concert film, and it is primarily for Swifties. As the title implies, the show focuses on the eras of Swift's career as distinguished by her albums. With the exception of those demarcations noted on screen, there are no captions or other text, nor any interview or background footage, much like Muse's 2019 Simulation Theory. The production is dazzling, and for the price of a nosebleed seat in some stadium, you are right there, and then some, gliding and swooping with the floor and drone cameras. As to what else is going on here, we're not in the habit of referring to other reviews, but there's a negative one in a right-wing mag called the National Review that in its reciprocal, and in far less time than we have here, is key to understanding what's cool and important about the Swifties. The perspective of that reviewer is that of an old codger threatening kids in his yard, sort of a Harold Bloom without the intellect, and who sees civilizational threat behind every trend, especially if youthful and inquisitive. Just turning your back on this crap is reason enough to check out Eras, but in addition, you'll enjoy a damn fine pop show. This has been Take Two Movie Review. I'm Mike Friend. Catch up with us at Take2MovieReview.com and feed us back on our channel on YouTube.
This is Scientific American's 60-Second Science. I'm Christopher Intagliata. Exactly 1,000 years ago, in the year 1021, a Viking or two or three likely wandered around the very northern tip of Newfoundland, cutting down trees.
Clearing a particular spot, or for gathering wood that might have been used as timber for construction of some type, or perhaps for boat repair. They were very careful to obviously make sure their ships were seaworthy.
Michael D. is a geoscientist at the University of Groningen in the Netherlands. He says it's not news that Vikings made it to North America around this time. Scientists and scholars have surmised as much from archaeological remains in Newfoundland and by scrutinizing ancient texts, like the Icelandic sagas.
One is not really sure how literal one can take the Icelandic sagas. They contain a lot of not only inaccuracies, a lot of things that are obviously fantastical. Things like dead people speaking to them and so on.
But now Dee and his colleagues have been able to come up with a precise date, the year 1021, based on evidence these Norse visitors left behind, specifically a stump, a log, and a branch. Wood anatomists have determined that certain surfaces of that wood must have been cut by metal blades. That's a Viking technology the local indigenous people are not known to have shared. And Dee's team was able to use a cosmic occurrence, an extraordinary shower of high-energy particles from space around the year 993 to date the felling of the trees. You see, that shower of cosmic rays created an abundance of radiocarbon. When taken up by the trees, it left a lasting signature in the tree rings, giving the scientists a key to pinpoint the year 993 in the 3 wood samples, using radiocarbon dating.
And then you see all you have to do is count the rings from there to the edge. You have to know where the edge is, the bark edge, and then you'll know that was the last growth year of the tree, or the felling date of the tree. And it just so happened that in all 3 cases, that was exactly the same year, 1021 AD.
The details are in the journal Nature. The year 1021 therefore marks the first time we know of that Europeans set foot in the Americas. But as the authors write, it also marks, quote, the earliest known year by which human migration had encircled the planet.
Ever since moving out of Africa through Europe and Asia and across the Americas, nobody had got across the Atlantic Ocean. So by this date, we know that the Atlantic Ocean was crossed for the first time.
But, as we know, it wouldn't be the last. Thanks for listening. For Scientific American's 60-Second Science, I'm Christopher Intagliata.
This program is presented by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention.
For an expectant mother, taking care of her developing baby means taking good care of herself. One way she can do this is by ensuring she gets vaccinated. If a woman is or might be pregnant during flu season, it's especially important to get her annual flu shot, preferably before the end of October. In addition, women should be vaccinated against whooping cough during the 3rd trimester of each pregnancy. Failure to get vaccinated places both mother and baby at increased risk for serious complications of these infections, including hospitalization and even death. If you're pregnant or planning to get pregnant, ask your healthcare provider when you should get your vaccines. Thank you for joining us on A Minute of Health with CDC.
For the most accurate health information, visit cdc.gov or call 1-800-CDC-INFO.
We're the Goo Goo Dolls. We're fortunate that our daughters have what they need to grow and learn. But that isn't the case for nearly 13 million kids in the U.S. that struggle with hunger.
Childhood hunger is a heartbreaking reality that Feeding America is working to change. Each year, the Feeding America network of food banks rescues billions of pounds of good food that would have gone to waste and provides it to families and children in need.
You can help kids in need in your community by visiting feedingamerica.org.
Brought to you by Feeding America and the Ad Council.
He seems sorry.
We very clearly told him not to look up there.
I'm honestly impressed that he was able to do it.
Right? What, did he balance on that big chair?
Yeah, I mean, I guess he'll just know what his gifts are this year.
I really thought we had hidden them well.
If they can find their presents, they can find a gun.
911, what is your emergency?
Every day, 8 kids and teens are unintentionally killed or injured by loaded and unlocked guns. Learn how to make your home safer at endfamilyfire.org. Brought to you by the Ad Council and End Family Fire.
Hi, I'm Tom Hartman, and since you're listening to netrootsradio.com, show your progressive side and go to the donate button on the bottom of the homepage. It's progressives like you who power Netroots Radio and keep the progressive message beaming everywhere 24 hours a day. Just go to our donate button at the bottom of netrootsradio.com. Thank you for keeping progressive radio at full power.
You're listening to the American Democracy Minute, keeping your government by and for the people. Just in time for Halloween, Michigan GOP legislators are attempting to reanimate the rejected independent state legislature theory to invalidate a voting rights citizen ballot initiative passed in 2022. Haven't we seen this horror movie before? Michigan's voters passed Proposition 2 with 60% of the vote in 2022. The citizen ballot initiative enshrined early voting, no excuse absentee, automatic voter registration, protections for poll workers from harassment, and other reforms into the state constitution. Earlier this year, the U.S. Supreme Court rejected an argument by the North Carolina legislature in Moore v. Harper that a fringe interpretation of the U.S. Constitution allowed it complete control of election law, trumping gubernatorial vetoes and the courts. Democracy Docket reports that the Michigan GOP legislators are arguing in federal district court that the Prop 2 citizen ballot initiative undermined the power of the Michigan legislature and must be invalidated. They are further asking the court to prohibit any future citizen initiatives which regulate, quote, the time, place, and manner of federal elections, unquote, a role granted to state legislatures in the Elections Clause. While the case is not likely to go far, there are members of the U.S. Supreme Court who embrace the ISL theory and may like to consider a related case. We'll keep watch for the monster behind the door. Find the case and analysis at AmericanDemocracyMinute.org. I'm Brian Beal.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1948. That was the day that a thick yellow fog rolled over the town of Donora, Pennsylvania, just south of Pittsburgh. Donora was a mill town, nestled in a valley on the banks of the Monongahela River. By 1948, the town had grown to 14,000 people who came to work in the town's steel mills and the Donora Zinc Works. For years, the local residents had complained about the pollution that spilled from the plants. Smog was a regular occurrence, but this fog was even worse than usual. A layer of cold air was trapping a noxious blend of nitrogen dioxide, sulfuric acid, and fluoride pollution. 24 hours passed, and still the fog grew denser. The police and local doctors began to receive reports of people having difficulty breathing. The fog had become so thick that residents could not see to drive. For 5 days, the smog hung over the town until a rain began to break it up. Nearly half of the town's residents became ill. 20 died. U.S. Steel refused to take blame for the fog, even though they continued to run the plant as the deadly toxins continued to build. According to a 2010 article by the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, despite the efforts of industry to cast the tragedy as an act of God, the fatalities in Donora received national attention. The event changed the way air pollution was viewed, moving it rapidly from an aesthetic issue to a public health concern, and spurred local, state, and federal officials to control toxic air pollution. In 2008, a smog museum opened with the motto, "Clean air starts here." Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com, like us on Facebook, and follow us on the Twitters at Labor History in 2.
Thank you for accompanying us here to the Chef's Table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Blue Moon Spirits Fridays, because we are all Nighthawks in the Diner of Life. We always begin, whether from around the world, along the banks of the Rogue River in the Rogue River Valley of Southern Oregon on the west coast of the continental United States of America, because there's lots more of us where we come from, where it is now currently 34 degrees Fahrenheit under very foggy conditions, expecting highs in the upper 50s. Some clouds this morning will give way to generally sunny skies for the afternoon. Winds will be light and variable. Clear skies overnight with lows in the upper 20s, low 30s, winds light and variable. Then sunny tomorrow with highs once again in the upper 50s, winds light and variable. And it looks like we will have very chilly nights in the upper 20s throughout the weekend. And I should note that we remain under an active freeze watch. So take care if you have those kind of conditions in your area. Looks like ragweed pollen is now registering once again, and it is in the low range. The air quality index for the Rogue River Valley region is in the good range at 31 parts per million, and the daytime UV index is low at level 2. Barometric pressure is falling at 30.23 inches. Visibility is down to less than a quarter mile, and relative humidity is at 100%. Weather from around the world is brought to you by a crowd of crowdsourced weather stations that a crowd crowdsources from around the world, and that is the Weather Underground. London is 58 degrees and partly cloudy with an advisory for potential disruption because of wind. Paris is 60 degrees and cloudy with an active advisory for a potential disruption because of wind. Rome is 73 and partly cloudy with an active advisory for a potential disruption because of wind. A lot of wind over there in that part of Europe. Looks like Bagram is 68 and sunny with no active advisories except look out for the Taliban. Kyiv is 64 and mostly cloudy. Look out for the Russians. They're bombing everything. Looks like Beijing is 80 degrees and fair, and you know who to look out there. Tokyo is 65 and clear. I got nothing. Port Melbourne, Victoria, Australia is 58 degrees and partly cloudy. San Francisco, California is 48 degrees and partly cloudy. Chicago, Illinois is 65 and mostly cloudy. And New York is 62 degrees Fahrenheit and fair. And that is weather from around the world, brought to you by a crowd of crowdsourced weather stations that a crowd crowdsources from around the world. World Desk of the Associated Press brings us this first amuse-bouche here at the Chef's Table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Blue Moon Spirits Fridays. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres said yesterday, Thursday, that he was announcing the appointment of a 39-member global advisory panel to report on international governance of artificial intelligence and its risks, challenges, and key opportunities. The UN chief told a news conference the gender-balanced, geographically diverse group, which spans generations, will issue preliminary recommendations by the end of the year and final recommendations by the summer of 2024. The recommendations will feed into the UN Summit of the Future, which world leaders will attend in September of 2024. In our challenging times, AI could power extraordinary progress for humanity, Guterres said, adding that its transformative potential for good is difficult even to grasp. But, he said, the potential harms of AI extend to serious concerns over misinformation and disinformation, the entrenching of bias and discrimination, surveillance and invasion of privacy, fraud, and other violations of human rights. Let alone them all linking up and having a Skynet. Do we really want that? Back to the article at hand. It is already clear, Guterres said, that malicious use of AI could undermine trust in institutions, weaken social cohesion, and threaten democracy itself. Wow. Is that what it's already doing? The UN said the formation of the body with experts from government, the private sector, the research community, civil society, and academia marks a significant step in its efforts to address issues of AI international governance and will help bridge existing and emerging initiatives.
Je te donne ce mon amour pour la vie entière, la promesse de me trouver à tes genoux. Aussitôt que tu m'appelles, rester toujours fidèle, c'est tout, c'est tout. Je te donne tous mes printemps, mes étés de mer, mes automnes quand les feuilles tombent partout. Si ce n'est pas une bonne affaire, je te donne tous mes hivers.
Jack Jeffrey on the World Desk at the Associated Press brings us this final amuse-bouche here at the Chef's Table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. The Sudanese army and its rival paramilitary force resumed peace talks yesterday, Thursday, in a new push to end the nearly 7-month conflict between Sudan's warring factions, Saudi Arabia said. The revived talks between representatives from the Sudanese army, led by Abdel Fattah Burhan, and the Rapid Support Force paramilitary, commanded by Mohammed Hamdan Dagalo, are underway in the Saudi coastal city of Jeddah, the kingdom's foreign ministry said in a statement. The talks are being brokered by both Riyadh and Washington, the statement said. The RSF and the army both confirmed on Wednesday that they would participate in the talks. Sudan was plunged into chaos in mid-April when simmering tensions between the military and the RSF exploded into open warfare in the capital Khartoum and other areas across the East African nation. The conflict has reduced the capital, Khartoum, and other urban areas into battlefields, wrecking the country's already dilapidated infrastructure. The previous peace talks were held in Jeddah earlier this year, but broke down in late June. Washington and Riyadh accused both sides of failing to abide by ceasefire deals they had agreed to. Since April, there have been at least 9 temporary ceasefire deals and all have foundered. Well, that brings us to the end of our broadcast period for the day and the week. But you do know Netroots Radio broadcasts on, and we will meet up here on Monday for River City Hash Mondays. So do stay tuned to Netroots Radio all day and all night and all weekend for all the breaking news as it breaks. And we will meet up here on Monday, right here in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte Goël. Je voudrais toujours te plaire dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je veux déjeuner par terre, comme au long de golfe clair, t'embrasser les yeux ouverts dans mon jardin d'hiver. Pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver.